Um, you know, with regards to Russia and Ukraine, the sanctions are, are having quite an impact. Okay, particularly in the whole space endeavors.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I read somewhere where there's someone who's in space at the moment. Looks like they might be stranded up there. So that's
yeah, but yesterday Russia said, not to worry. They'll stick to their side of the agreement, and they will go and collect them. And they're leaving this month, to go and shortly, in fact, to and but with other sanctions, all their large aeroplanes, like the Boeings and things like that, they're all leased in Russia, and they're leased from European countries. And so now the sanctions don't allow people to honor those contracts, okay, and to supply spare parts and things like that. So in a way that is I guess it depends whose side you're on.
well, that's the unfortunate thing. It's a little bit sort of following on in some respects from what we were talking about on Sunday. It's all about sides. It's not about but like the Alatra mantra is working towards a united solution.
Yeah.
It's not. It's just like I'm right, you're wrong,
mm.
and they're just entrenched. I mean, so the pathway out of that becomes very difficult.
Yeah. And Russia's also said to NATO, if you bring in supplies, we'll take you out before you arrive in Ukraine. Okay? So stay out of it. But I haven't seen if they have actually targeted any armaments, but they probably disguise the armaments as school buses or something.
Well, they probably have, yeah. But I think that's an important issue too, that the more people who become like directly geographically involved, the bigger this gets.
Yeah. So, yeah, and that's what the black hats want. You see, that's what the negative people. That's what they need a war. Okay, and it's terrible that they need a war, but it's the way they work. As much as the white hats don't need a war, don't want a war, and will do anything to stop a war, the other side want a war. So, but I don't think they're going to succeed with this particular situation, the black hats. I think from my take on it, I think Russia will do what it wants to do, okay, and get the Ukraine to surrender, and then they will put everything back to normal again. The Russians, I think, will help in that process, okay? So it's just making sure that the Nazis and these factional groups and these biolabs that are there are just all a thing of the past. Okay? And then the Ukrainians will get on and move on. And if there's which there is, a splinter group that quite a fair population, then maybe give them a territory of their own within Ukraine. Because Russia's helped support that sort of scenario in a lot of the countries that are neighboring Russia. Okay. And they seem to be working quite well. People just want, to live with their own nationalities, okay, I guess, or their own cultures. And
but in that part of the world, there are a lot of cultures, aren't there? In a fairly small area.
Yeah, they are. I mean, there's some nations. We just saw it on the news just before we started. Yeah, I went to 7 to see if there was news on 7, but they're showing footy instead. And the ABC News was showing that where the Ukrainians are, where they're disappearing to, all the refugees into the different countries. a lot are going to Russia and being taken care of. But another one is going to, what's the name of the country? Monaco? Monaco? No.
Monaco, is it? No?
No. Anyway, but and there is a subdivision again of one country that claims the whole country, and then there's this other section that declared independence a long time ago, and some people recognize them, other people don't. And the United Nations, because the majority don't recognize it, they don't recognize it. So therefore, it's an unofficial state that is sitting there with borders, with their own laws and everything else. Okay, but Russia recognizes it. Okay, so that like keeps them stable, and so, but they're unofficial, you know. And I don't see a problem with I don't see a problem with people, you know, living in a community of their own. Okay.
No, not at all. No.
So,
in many respects, it's sort of, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be much different than like an ashram or something like that, really, does it? You know, like
no, that's a good example, yeah. And there are lots of. I mean, if you take Somalia, for example, you know, within Somalia there is a country. There's what is called Somaliland. Okay, not Somalia. Somalia is the bigger thing. And Somaliland is, and they declared independence. They have a referendum and so on. But Somalia wouldn't recognize them because it's their territory, and the United Nations wouldn't recognize them. But there's been a lot of conflict there, okay, historically, not right in the moment, but why, you know? So yeah, there are a lot of places like that all over the world, and there are splits. I mean, even when you think of India was, you know, when the British eventually pulled out, okay, then India and Pakistan split up, okay, and that seemed to make sense because they were basically two different nationalities, okay, two different cultures. So yeah, it's all over the world. So, you know, why not in the Ukraine? Okay.
And even putting aside the physicality, I mean, I think with modern technology, there's no reason that, you know, like an online community that's not dependent on where you are geographically, you know, if you align with, you know, the values and the proposition of that community, then hey, that's your choice. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Something has to change with I think the attitude of the United Nations. I think for me, the United Nations has been impregnated by dark forces, okay, and that never holds good. So, you know,
well, I think after World War One, there was the League of Nations, wasn't there?
That's right. It was the League of Nations. Yes,
and that was pretty ineffective from all reports.
Yeah, and then came the United Nations. But you know, then we got other groupings like the Commonwealth, for example.
Commonwealth and NATO, and
yeah,
you know,
and so you know, the United Nations, I guess, gets funded by every Tom,
member
Dick,
states.
Yeah,
member states.
Yeah. And so they call the tune. You know, who pays the piper? That's true. Yeah. So, so there must be, you know, some. I don't think it's the Commonwealth. Although the Commonwealth has actually grown, there have been new members brought onto the Commonwealth. But I'm not sure if I'm aware of any other type of conglomerate of states. You know, that, yeah, so maybe it's something that's still got to happen.
They tend to be a little bit geographically based too, don't they? Tend to be, you know, like ASEAN and NATO and that, you know. So
Yeah, not so much the Commonwealth.
no.
Yeah. Uh, anyway, as we said on Sunday, I think the outcome is going to be there will be a peaceful resolution. Okay, once all the people that have been trying to take control of the Ukraine, let's call them the Nazis, okay, are put to bed, then they'll be back to normal. And, yeah, it's so unfortunate that there are casualties.
It did. It always is. Yeah. But I mean, the indications are that it's not going to be a protracted thing, though, is it? Unless unless other people come running in. But
no, I don't think it's going to be a protracted thing. I think that that very shortly, and I don't know what very shortly means, but it's certainly not going to be a protracted. I think Russia will take control and then immediately put people in charge of their own people and start repairing what's been done. I'm sure that will happen soon. It certainly happen this year, okay, in my opinion, and probably sooner than the end of the year. So yeah, and then I think Russia's achieved its objective. It wants to keep its borders, safe and prosperous. So I think that will be the outcome, and I think it's watching all the time. All these other countries that are neighboring Russia, there, like we've mentioned, it's got a finger in all those security pies, but doesn't dominate them. Doesn't dictate to them. Okay, they must run their own democracy, or whatever type of they want to run. So we'll see. Yeah.
But it has been fascinating at one level too. You look at the news reports, and anything Russian, like Russian billionaires, for example, are immediately labelled as oligarchs or whatever they call them. Oh, anyway.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were talking about a billionaire in the US, for example, well, they're just a very successful person.
Yeah. I was also quite surprised when I read about the billionaires in China. And I thought, how do you become a billionaire in China? Okay, it's supposed to be communist. Okay, and that still puzzles me a bit. Okay, how that works out. That also, we were talking about the borders of Russia. It's also going to be interesting. The border between Russia and China. Okay. I remember when I was growing up, there was a prophecy that China would attack Russia on horseback. It obviously was a long time ago, I guess. I don't know. Because and the conspiracy theory there was that China was breeding masses of horses on that side of China. Okay, in a disproportionate amount of. I don't know whether it's still like that or not, but I just remember this might be 20 or 30 years ago. Okay. Yeah, or 40, 50 years ago, maybe. So, but they do border each other, and they don't seem to, or the media doesn't pick up anything negative, which means there's probably positive things happening on that border. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
Yeah. Talking about interesting, I used that word in my mind this morning. And that is, NASA has got a whole lot of projects And I lose track. I really have. I must try and identify these things and put them in their place, because they really are interesting projects. They're not just all outer space. Most of them are, but they're not all. And the things you don't hear about in the mainstream media. But they're doing the first of the Artemis program, where all the European countries that are part of it, the first launch is going to be in 2 days' time, okay, of the project that sends private people from the European countries to the space station, okay, to the International Space Station. But the interesting thing, well, that's what I want to get to, is that NASA's got a, in a movie, when a new movie comes out, you get the trailer, okay?
Yeah.
NASA has launched a trailer, a video, okay? And you listen to it, and it's quite exciting. It's like a movie that you're going to watch, okay? I mean, it lasts like a trailer lasts. I think it's only about 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes or something. I must really send you the link, because it is so interesting that they do that. I suppose I don't know why, just to make people aware of what's going on, possibly. Anyway.
That part of humans leaving the planet still seems to be a core part of the work that they're doing, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, they are, but they really are also not so much doing it themselves, as we mentioned on Sunday. They're doing it. They are finding the people, encouraging private enterprise to come forward, and then they issue contracts, okay, for those developments, and that speeds everything up, okay. And so yes, they definitely. I mean, they've got all sorts of probes out there at the moment, and all sorts of technologies out in space that you don't hear too much about. But yes, their main goal is certainly. But there's a lot of spin-offs for people on the planet as well. A lot of spin-offs. Okay, so a lot of new, materials and gadgets and things that get made because of what they researched. And,
I still, at the moment, can't help but wonder, though. I mean, obviously, we don't have access to, the complete picture or whatever, but based on my understanding of the technology that's available to us, physically traveling through space, is, you wouldn't think, a viable option.
Yeah.
Using the current technology as we know it, So, like rockets and stuff like that. Yeah.
What were you thinking?
Well, I mean, as I don't know, like, to get to the moon, what does it take? A few days or something, doesn't it, to get to the moon?
Yeah.
To get to Mars, it takes. I don't know what the figures are, like the time.
Well, it used to take 9 months, okay, to get to Mars.
Yeah.
But they can now get to Mars in a lot less, okay, 3 months. Yeah.
But it's still a long time, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
but now with Musk, and once he gets his Starship going, then it's going to cut even a lot more. Okay. But anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
No. Well, I was just sort of thinking, like, even to get to the edge of the solar system, you're talking about, a lifetime, aren't you, basically?
Yeah. There you are. I mean, if you take the James Webb Telescope, it's about 1 million miles from Earth. Okay. And it took a few months to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, so you just sort of wonder about the viability of that. I mean, there's certainly, in terms of space exploration, well, I mean, radio telescopes are obviously the most efficient way to do that. But in terms of physical exploration, well, that's going to be a longer, slow process unless there's a technological breakthrough which enables us to, cover huge, vast distances in a very short time. So,
yeah, I think that will happen. I really do. The way things have evolved, if you just look at, when the first men walked on the moon, okay, and how long NASA didn't stop. They didn't put any more people on the moon until President Trump actually gave them the go-ahead. But they hadn't stopped, researching and in other areas, and things have evolved. And now that the whole space thing is opened up, because I guess Russia was really one of the leaders, okay, and then came this International Space Station, and then came China, and now things are speeding up so much that I think the technology is evolving at a big pace, okay, if you just look at the last 10 years, okay. I think so I think you will find that the breakthrough that you're talking about will happen, and maybe is happening all the time, but I mean the technology, like for example, the power that they need up on the moon and on Mars and so on, okay. Now with the new technology, they can take water, hydrogen and oxygen, and extract the hydrogen and use that as power, okay. And they can do it in small quantities, okay, and as large as they like. So that is I think sort of a major breakthrough as far as energy, and it's sustainable and it's renewable, okay. So yeah, I think it is there. I think it is definitely, and I think we need it, okay. But okay, we also need solutions to how we're going to handle climate change.
Oh, exactly right. I mean, I can't think of any logical reason why we shouldn't explore, the cosmos of which we live in, because it's clearly part of who we are. Like there's no separation in that sense. So I don't see that there's anything wrong with that. In fact, I think it's a logical thing to do to try and better understand who we are. But if the motivation is to escape this planet because we're destroying it, well then let's stop destroying it. So,
yeah, but it depends on what your view is of what's causing climate change.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, no, I understand.
And humans play a part, okay. And I'm not even clear in my own mind what percentage that part is, but climate change it's a cycle, and there's definitely the sun has influence in it, and there are other influences coming in from,
without a doubt. Without a doubt.
So we need to think, well, how do we either protect ourselves from the change as a humanity, or how do we prepare ourselves in order to whatever the inevitable is going to bring, how are we going to help one another in that process? Because obviously certain land masses, or even continents will be dramatically affected. Okay.
Oh, for sure. And the other thing, like the thing associated with that, as you say, is I'm sure the solution is a lot bigger and more varied than one of the abandoned ship. So.
No, I agree. And coming back to NASA, you see, NASA has many projects that are observing climate change. not only from space and from low space and higher up, but also on the planet itself. Okay, so NASA is able to accurately give you information about how things are actually warming up. Okay, and what are the manifestations of that warming up, but also statistically, it can give you that information. And so,
yeah, but I can't help think at one level anyway, a lot around the way that we live on this planet at the moment has been, especially in the last couple of hundred years, the last 100 years in particular, just driven by this consumerism, this sort of, everyone's got to own a car, everyone's got to, the railways and the oil companies and the airlines and all of that sort of stuff, it's all been built on the basis of profit.
Yeah, okay, but the pendulum swings, you see, and I think, nature is all powerful, okay, and not only in the sense of nature as we perceive it around us, but also nature as in God, okay, or God in nature, okay. The pendulum swings so far, and then it swings back, okay. So swinging back or getting to the end of its swing with the consumeristic society, when it reaches, the pendulum reaches that end, okay, that something changes, okay, and man is not going to change in the foreseeable future unless it's through pain and suffering, and no option, has to find some other option, and nature will provide that opportunity of no option, okay. And then something will change, because there's no sense in consumerism if you're trying to, survive and so live, okay.
But I mean, consumerism is so wasteful, that it aims to.
But you're not going to change it. You're not going to change it.
It aims to turn, like natural resources into things so that they can sell. And and same with food production. Like the amount of food that's thrown away, and I mean, so there's got to be just a mindset change about how we live on this planet.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, though, is that you're not going to have a mindset change unless it's forced onto humanity. Okay, people aren't going to change from what they're doing now. That's what they know, and that's there's a little twinkling over on this side of the planet or this country. There's a little bit of positivity in the direction that you envisage, but I can't see it happening. We know that's the case. We've been saying that for many, many years. Okay, you and I spoke about it, and I've written articles on it. And, but it's a lot is not going to change it. Okay, and Moya's not going to change it. Okay, and Sadhguru is not going to interfere either. Okay, even if they did have the power. Okay, they're not going to, because you can't interfere with God's plan.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's got to go. It's got to go. It's swing of the pendulum. It's got to go through its karmic repercussions. And when you look back, maybe in 1,000 years, then you say, oh, 2022. Okay. What a terrible year. How could people possibly live that sort of consumeristic society?
Yeah. Okay. Exactly. Yeah.
But now it's 3022 even, maybe. Okay, and everything has changed, and we've got new continents. Okay, Africa split down the middle and is separated into two continents. America's gone under the sea. Australia's burnt to the ground, and now we've got a whole new ball game where people are surviving. Okay, that's it. Going back to Earth to grow some food and hunter-gatherers again. And maybe some with modern technology survive on the mountaintop somewhere. Okay.
Well, that's right, and it might be, just a proximity to the sun or something like that.
So change, I think, is guaranteed, but I think it's a forceful change. Yeah.
It would be nice if it would be influenced by intention, wouldn't it? Mm.
Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great? Okay. But according to the society that we live in, okay, it's got to be influential people that convince the masses, okay, using the media, okay, to change. Okay, but it just, you know, it takes somebody that people respect or look up to or whatever. Okay, and I don't know who that would be. But you know, it wouldn't be the Queen, it wouldn't be the Pope, it wouldn't be Biden, it wouldn't be the Australian Premier, you know. But maybe it'll be somebody, you know, like Elon Musk, okay, or Richard Branson. No, not him. He doesn't have enough influence. I don't know. Jeff Bezos, people love and don't love and hate. So it's difficult. Who would be somebody that, if Nelson Mandela was still alive, I would say he could be the person. Okay.
And that's what I was thinking, you know, the likes of a Nelson Mandela or a Gandhi or someone like that who wasn't, you know, influenced by materialism, you know.
Absolutely.
You know, it was a case, yeah, and it really was a case of people first.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Are you
so
aware? Are you aware of anybody like that at the moment in the world?
That's tricky.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm really not. Okay, because you know the Gandhis had a mission, and Nelson Mandela did have a mission. Okay, so we're not talking about a spiritual guru or anything. We're talking about an individual who, you know, through hard work probably gains the respect of the people.
Yeah, and also, you know, being a speaker of truth, you know. So,
yes, yes. That's an interesting thing to look out for. See,
it is really, isn't it? When you think about it,
yeah. Especially if we think it can change the planet. Okay.
Because if you look at Alatra, for example, their speaker of the truth is probably the Book of Alatra, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And whilst, you know, Igor is an important spokesperson, he doesn't suggest that
he's the leader.
That he's the leader, or that he should be followed, or anything like that, really.
Yeah. Well, neither did the other two we mentioned. So maybe he, you know, maybe he is the person, okay, because he seems to be the center spokesman, and so that could be.
That's an interesting thought. Yeah.
Yes, it is an interesting thought, because forget about all the videos that every Tom, Dick, and Harry puts out on Alatra, but the concept they stand for, you know, their 6 foundation pillars, and when you do listen to a video from him, you know, you do get inspired. Okay.
Oh, without doubt.
Yeah. So maybe he is the man. Okay. Or he's putting down the foundations for somebody to, you know, come into that role. Yeah, that is interesting. That could be the person we're looking for. Because I don't think I've ever heard him talk like a Moya or a Satguru. You know, I don't watch all that many videos. I'll probably start watching more after this moment now. But yeah, so he's not trying to persuade people from a religious point of view or a spiritual point of view. Okay, he's just saying what you always say,
mm, mm,
this is not a livable life that we're living. Okay, it's not a
mm,
sustainable life that we're living. We need to
mm,
change. So everybody who wants to change, come hold hands with us.
mm,
Okay,
mm,
um, and there's no money involved in supporting them and joining them and listening to their videos. Yeah, yeah, that's very, very interesting. He
mm,
could be the man. It's funny we stumbled on the solution. The solution is somebody like, yeah, we have. Come on,
mm,
we've stumbled on
mm,
the solution. Okay,
mm.
we're looking for a Mandela. Okay, um, yeah.
It was interesting too that like this afternoon I was listening to a talk about how Zen masters quite often teach students. And one of the things that they often look out for is a spontaneous response. So
Yeah.
that, when they ask a student something, the response is just spontaneous. There's no hesitation, there's no dilly-dallying or whatever. Doesn't mean that doesn't mean you have to answer straight away. Like you can just sit in silence, for a period and then answer. But when there's hesitation, which is a different thing, it signals, uncertainty and perhaps fear or, some of those sorts of things. Whereas, that even if the answer is not immediately known, by not saying something is actually an action.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
And I've noticed that the videos that I have watched of him, when he's in that Q&A type thing, there is no hesitation. It just flows spontaneously from him.
Yeah.
There's nothing to think about. There's nothing to reason. It's just like, well, no, this is what is, So it resonates, on a different level quite strongly with me because of that, as does Sadhguru. Like, he doesn't sit there, well, or, it's just like, just answers, So,
Yeah.
And if there is a pause, the pause isn't about formulating an answer. The pause is, what's the best way to describe this?
Yeah. And pauses, can be very effective to emphasize a point as well.
Mm, mm.
Um,
Yeah, it's sort of like, some of these sort of Zen koans, for example, like, you've got an opportunity to talk directly to God and ask God any question that you want. One question, but any question that you want. What would you ask?
mm,
And if you were spontaneous, you just say, "Oh, I'd ask this."
yeah.
And the important thing is that there's nothing stopping God, of course, of answering those questions. Like, if you asked a question, there's nothing stopping God saying, well, that question doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Mm. So it sort of cuts through it, doesn't it? It cuts through all the nonsense and all the hyperbole to just what is.
Mm. Mm.
Mm. Part of it, like they were giving a description of, yin and yang, so that symbol of, the black and the white, and the different meanings associated with it, and that can be interpreted so many different ways in terms of, what is the black and what is the white, knowing full well that the white also contains the black because of the, the black eye sort of, in it. But interestingly, that yin and yang is also a representation of the double helix. It's a representation of spiral galaxies. It's a representation of so many things.
Yeah.
And yet, some teachings give it the narrowest of definition.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, the yin and the yang, the foundation of existence.
It is the foundation of existence too. And when you think about, that how can you know what good is without evil? You can't.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you know what on is without off?
Yeah, yeah.
So when you sort of start to see the truth of what is, it makes a lot of the stories around, things that we've grown up with just seem foolish, or stories that are aimed at controlling, that the idea of a righteous, angry God is one that's probably largely perpetrated on the basis of engendering fear into a congregation so that they'll comply.
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, so someone like Igor, well, not someone like Igor
Himself, yeah.
Igor himself, would be a fantastic candidate for that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I'm guessing that in maybe some of the African cultures, like the idea of an oracle, it's not someone that you worship, but someone that you hang off every word, though.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's not someone that, that you say, is like a deity, but someone you ignore at your own peril.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's an interesting position, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It really is. I remember Moya saying at one point that, that Nelson Mandela would return.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Don't really know what that means. Okay. But yeah. And he also, must tell you that he says the transformation of the world, okay, will actually start in the southern hemisphere of Africa.
Okay. Yeah, you've mentioned that before.
Yeah. And he's written quite a lot about it, and so whether that's when that is, of course, is when things will happen, because at the moment, it's going through politically, the worst times, other than apartheid, of course, but the worst times since Nelson Mandela was alive. Okay.
Is that right?
Yeah. It's going through really They're almost like headless, and the consumeristic society, which in African terms means bribery and corruption, is at an extreme high level. Okay. And resulting in terrible things like, my brother keeps telling me they have power cuts, okay, that are 6 to 8 hours a day, and those power cuts are scheduled across the country, okay, and we've got the best system basically on the continent, okay, and yet we have these issues, and the issues is because they try to sell out, and an Indian gentleman was trying to buy the country, okay, and they started with the power plants and the coal mines that supply the nuclear power and so on, and now they've for decades they haven't spent any money on upgrading, keeping things in good repair, and because before or while Nelson Mandela was there, and also in the previous regime, never once was there a power cut. Okay, so you came back all that time. Now, 25 years later, okay, that same infrastructure has gone to rack and ruin, and it can't supply the needs. Okay, South Africa used to sell electricity to its neighboring countries. Okay, and so it was really strong. So that's what I mean, where things are deteriorating. And I asked my brother, what's the solution? He said, well, the political party has to go, which it won't, okay, because it's supported by all the unemployed under 35s, okay, and they want handouts, they don't want jobs. And,
it comes back a bit to what we were talking about on Sunday too, doesn't it? The things like power supply and health and sanitation and sewerage and those sort of things.
Yeah.
They are things that just should be done.
Yeah.
Like this whole idea about, what's the cost?
Yeah.
They can say in South Africa at the moment, the cost of the power is this. But it doesn't factor in the cost of not having power for 8 hours a day in the community. So in the year, 2022, not having power in a first world continent like South Africa is unforgivable.
It is unforgivable, and even alternative power like solar panels are so expensive in South Africa. Yeah, here in Australia, you get them on your house for next to nothing with all the government assistance and everything else, okay? And that's a really good route to go for Australia because, it's got so much sun.
Yeah, although it's being prostituted a bit at the moment, because my son was telling me, it's because there's so many solar panels on houses now in Australia. The power companies, are finding themselves in a situation where they should, theoretically, based on the model that they're operating on, they should be paying the consumer.
Yeah.
Not the other way around, because of the amount of supply in the system.
Yeah.
So their response to that, of course, is, we're going to use we're going to charge you a fee, for putting power into the grid, and we're going to do this. And it's just like, well, why the hell are we doing this? It's.
Yeah.
And in fact, my younger brother was saying that, that his solution to all of these fees that they now want to charge back, which is the whole reason that you went to solar anyway, is so that you in effect had free energy.
Yeah.
Was to look at battery storage, so like the Tesla type battery storage.
Yeah.
And even like the latest generation Tesla car, when it's parked in your garage, it can be part of the power supply for your house.
Right.
So,
so
it sort of provides more functions than just a means of transport. It's just another remote power supply, you know, to power other parts of the house when it's not in use.
Yeah, you mentioned in one of our previous talks about the Tesla battery. It's somewhere in southern Australia. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So
so that technology, and I'm sure it exists now, but it just hasn't been rolled out, in a wider sense because of other vested interests. But, they're simple solutions to what's, seemingly happening in South Africa at the moment. Just
yeah, but unfortunately, the solar panels, they're not affordable for Mr. Average. Okay.
And you'd have to ask why.
Yeah.
Why? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. My brother was quoting figures. I mean, last week I think it was. It's just stupid because he's out in the country and he gets badly affected by these power outages because he's got on his premises he's got three retailers of different descriptions that rent from him. Okay. And so it affects them big time. And so for him, he looked at putting in solar panels. It's just not feasible. Okay.
Yeah, well, that has to change, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And as you say, the rationale for change can only come, when we want to treat our other, fellow members of the human race equally and fairly and justly.
Yeah.
And that should be the disease that we're trying to stamp out.
Yeah.
We should be trying to stamp out. That and the literal disease, but stamp out poverty, stamp out all of those things. And that's where the focus should be directed. Not when you look at big pharma. I mean, my goodness. How is that acting in the best interest of humanity?
I want to just ask you a question before we go, and that is on the news this afternoon, they were speaking about somebody going to court because he killed 3 people in a boarding house and then set the boarding house on fire. And then they brought up the news, other boarding houses that were on fire. And they clearly were in quite sort of, let's say, call them inexpensive areas, these boarding houses. Now, in South Africa, we don't have boarding houses. What is a boarding house? Is it supplied by the state? Is it a state-run thing? Is it?
Yeah, normally if it's not state-run, it's normally like a not-for-profit organisation, usually.
Okay.
Aimed at providing housing at low or no cost for certain groups of identified groups of people in need, whether it's like escapees of domestic violence or recovering drug addicts or homeless people for whatever reason.
Okay. So when you mention homeless, I understand. So it's okay. So it's either run by the state or it's sponsored by the state. Those organizations are sponsored to run a boarding house. So
and they're sort of viewed as not necessarily permanent accommodation. Like it's aimed at sort of transitioning them back to another level, so to enable people to get back on their feet and provide
sort of a
support.
transition.
Generally, or to escape a certain situation or something like that.
Okay.
So it's not, as I said, viewed necessarily to be a permanent thing for an individual, but it sort of operates on the basis that people will be in a better position to become self-sufficient again.
Okay. Okay. So they probably won't pay rent if they're subsidized.
Either no or low rent. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so if they're on social security, which invariably they are, it might be just, you know, part of their social security check or something like that.
Okay.
But they generally are subsidized and sponsored.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for clearing that up. It was, you know, just looking at it on the news, as I said.
yeah, and it's an area that does require more attention, particularly in the area, in my personal opinion, anyway, particularly in the area relating to like mental health. You know,
Okay.
the number of people who are finding themselves, you know, sleeping rough because of mental health issues. You know, so I don't think our communities in Australia deal with mental health anywhere near it the way it should.
Yeah, I think that's generally also in South Africa, without a doubt. Okay. There are mental health institutions, okay, that people get put into, if you like. I don't know if you have those here in Australia too.
Not as much anymore. It's just about putting them in the community.
Yeah.
So they might be in these sort of like boarding houses type facilities, or
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
but if they don't meet, you know, a certain criteria, then they're on their own. You know, so
They aren't like nursing homes for them or something. Like
oh really?
that.
No. I mean, there used to be institutions, you know, like mental hospitals, I suppose you'd call them, you know, but they've all been pretty much deconstructed, and you know, there'll be like these, you know, houses scattered through the community where there might be like 4 or 5 people live in a house. But again, more in transition, you know.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. Okay.
there's a homeless guy I see lives around this area here. You know, you see him walking around, he's got his backpack, sometimes a shopping trolley. He's only reasonably young too. I'd say probably be, I mean, I'm not a good judge of age, but my guess is probably mid-30s.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And yeah, you just
Have you ever chatted to him?
no, I've never crossed paths with him directly. I've seen him when I've been driving and that, but I've never,
Okay.
you know, sort of walked into him at any stage. So
Yeah.
but,
Yeah. We've got one in the next suburb that often just sits outside the IGA, just on the pavement there, and so on. And people walk past and give him some money. And yeah, I haven't chatted to him, but I would like to just, you know, find out, you know, how they get to do what they're doing. Okay. And what were the circumstances, or yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, you know, like if someone, even if they're in like a room share arrangement, I mean, you're probably talking, I don't know, what, $150 a week or something like that. You know, for someone who has no income, you know, that's a lot of money.
Absolutely, it is a lot of money.
Anyway.
Yeah. Okay,
my friend. Well, you have a good rest of the week, and I'll look forward to talking with you on Sunday.
Yeah, thanks very much. We've covered quite a lot today.
We have, yes. Certainly.
Okay, go well, man.
Okay.
Cheers.
Yeah, you too.
Okay,
bye.
bye.